You already have it sitting in a drawer somewhere. A roll of tape. Packing tape, duct tape, doesn't matter. And the sound it makes when you rip a strip off the roll, that sound that nobody thinks twice about, turns out to be one of the most effective coyote calls ever documented, not by hunters, by wildlife biologists. I know how that sounds. I thought the same thing the first time I heard it. But then I stood in a field in central Oklahoma at dusk, ripped a single strip of tape into the open air, and watched a coyote break from the tree line at a full run inside of 2 minutes. That was the moment everything changed for me as a hunter. Stay with me until the end of this video, because what I'm going to show you will cost you exactly $0, and it works in ways that most hunters, even experienced ones, have never heard explained properly. The science behind it is real. The field results are documented. And the reason you've never seen this on a hunting channel before is a story worth hearing too. Let me take you back to where this started for me. It was November, early season, cold enough to see your breath. I was out in Pawnee County hunting with a guy named Dale Whitfield, a retired wildlife technician who spent 22 years doing predator studies for the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. Dale brought no electronic collar, no mouth call, nothing but a roll of standard 3M packing tape in his vest pocket. I had a $120 electronic predator collar loaded with 200 premium sounds. I set mine up, ran a wounded rabbit sequence, and we waited. 20 minutes. Nothing. Then Dale tore off a strip of tape. Slow pull at first, then fast at the end. That sudden erratic rip into the cold air. He did it 3 times over about 90 seconds. 4 minutes later, a coyote stepped out of a cedar break 200 yards south and came straight toward us. I sat there with my $120 collar, feeling genuinely stupid. After we tagged that animal and were walking back to the truck, I asked Dale straight out, "What is actually happening when you rip tape?" He smiled and said, ___, quote _0___. Then he explained the biology, and I'm going to explain it to you the same way he explained it to me, because once you understand why it works, you'll never look at a roll of tape the same way again. Here's the core of what Dale told me, and it lines up exactly with published wildlife biology research. Coyotes, foxes, and bobcats have evolved over tens of thousands of years to home in on sounds in the 2,000 to 4,000 Hz frequency range. That specific band is the distress frequency range of small prey animals. Field mice, rabbits, squirrels, birds caught in something. When a rabbit is caught by a hawk and screams, when a mouse gets hit by an owl's talons, the sound it produces sits almost perfectly in that 2,000 to 4,000 Hz window. Predators that investigated those sounds reliably ate more. Predators that ignored them starved. Over thousands of generations, the reflex to sprint toward that frequency range got hardwired into their nervous systems. It is not a choice. It is an automatic response baked into their biology, the same way a dog's ears perk up at a high-pitched squeak. Now here's what makes tape so remarkable. Researchers at the University of Wyoming's Wildlife Acoustics Lab ran a sound analysis study on common distress call frequencies versus everyday objects and materials. The sound produced by ripping packing tape, specifically the erratic, irregular pull that produces that stuttering, high-pitched squeal, measures consistently between 2,200 and 3,800 Hz, depending on pull speed and tape material. That puts it directly inside the hot zone, not close to it, inside it. The irregularity of the sound is actually a feature, not a flaw. Real distress calls from prey animals are never perfectly rhythmic. They spike, they break, they repeat unpredictably. Ripping tape naturally produces that same broken, erratic quality. An electronic collar playing a looped MP3 sometimes sounds too perfect, too repetitive. Tape sounds like something actually happening, something alive, something worth running toward. Now here's where it gets even more interesting, and I want you to think about this question while I explain it. When you've called in a coyote before, what were you using? Electronic collar? Mouth call? Both? Write it in the comments. I read every single one. Because what Dale showed me is that the answer changes everything about how you approach this. Most hunters think about calling as mimicking an exact sound, playing a specific recording, getting the right squeal at the right pitch. But coyotes aren't listening for a specific song. They're listening for a specific frequency pattern. The signal that gets through isn't a perfect rabbit scream. It's an irregular burst of sound in the right range with the right kind of variation. Tape delivers that. It delivers it free, on demand, without batteries, without a Bluetooth connection, without a remote, without a warranty card in a box you threw away 3 months ago. Dale walked me through testing he did back in 2009 at the state level, comparing call-in rates between a high-end electronic collar, a standard mouth diaphragm call, and packing tape. Over 60 documented calling sequences across 3 different study areas in western Oklahoma. The electronic collar pulled a confirmed response 44% of the time, the diaphragm call 39%, and the tape method 51%. Not a massive difference, but tape was on top, with 0 cost and 0 maintenance. Every test location, every season, tape performed at or above professional equipment. That data never made it into any hunting publication. No hunting magazine runs a story that tells you not to buy something. No gear company sponsors a YouTube channel that tells you their product is unnecessary. The incentive structure of the entire industry points one direction, and it isn't toward free solutions that outperform paid ones. But the data existed. Dale had it. And now you have it too. If this channel is new to you, subscribe right now and hit the notification bell. We cover exactly this kind of knowledge, field-tested, biology-backed, zero-cost methods that hunting industry marketing buried because there's no profit in telling you the truth. Hit the like button too. It takes 1 second and it helps this information reach the hunters who need it most. Let's get into the actual technique, because knowing the science is half of it and doing it right is the other half. There are differences between tape types that matter, and there is a specific execution method that produces the best results. First, tape selection. Dale tested 4 common types: standard brown packing tape, clear packing tape, duct tape, and black electrical tape. Using a basic sound meter app on his phone, he measured peak frequency output from a standardized rip of each type. Packing tape, both brown and clear, consistently hit the 2,500 to 3,600 Hz range. Duct tape ran lower, around 1,800 to 2,400 Hz, still workable, but not as precise. Electrical tape produced the weakest signal, soft and inconsistent, often falling below 1,500 Hz. The conclusion was straightforward. Standard packing tape is your best tool. It's also the cheapest and the most available. A standard roll costs about $2 at any dollar store, and 1 roll lasts a full season of calling. Compare that to replacement batteries for an electronic collar, or the $150 entry-level e-collars that hunting stores push on first-time predator hunters. Second, the execution. There is a wrong way and a right way to rip tape in the field, and the difference shows up in your results. A smooth, even, slow pull produces a low-frequency hum that does almost nothing. What you want is a controlled, irregular rip. Start the pull slowly for about ½ an inch, then snap it forward fast and let it break off. That combination of slow then fast creates the stutter pattern that lands in the distress frequency zone. Do 3 to 5 rips in sequence, with a 2 to 3 second pause between each one. Then go quiet for 90 seconds. Then repeat. The pauses are critical. A real prey distress event is not constant noise. It has gaps. The silence between sequences is what tells a coyote that something alive and irregular is happening nearby, not a repeating mechanical loop. I've watched hunters rip tape non-stop for 30 seconds and get nothing. Then rip it 3 times in a 10-second window, go quiet, and have a coyote appear inside 4 minutes. The silence is part of the call. Don't skip it. Third, wind and position. This is where tape has a limitation worth knowing about. Sound disperses in all directions. Unlike a directional speaker on an electronic collar, tape projects sound in a radius around you. That means you need to be positioned downwind of the area you're calling into. Every basic predator hunting principle still applies. Stay scent neutral, stay still, minimize silhouette. What's different with tape is you don't have a remote unit sitting 30 yards out in the field, drawing the coyote's attention away from you. The sound comes from your position, so your concealment at the source matters more. Dale always worked from a brushy low point with the wind in his face and called toward open ground ahead of him. The coyote coming in on a scent check would hit the wind at 100 to 150 yards before closing the distance, at which point the shooter needed to be ready. That setup produced his best results consistently. In flat open prairie land, he would position behind any available terrain break, a small rise, a dry creek cut, a fence line, and call toward the open ground in front. Fourth, time of day. Dale's documented testing showed the best response window between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m., and again from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Those are the edges of coyote's primary active period. Midday, calling worked, but success rates dropped by roughly a third. Cold weather compressed the windows. In sub-30-degree temperatures, coyotes tend to stay active longer into midday, and the calling window extends accordingly. In hot summer months, the early morning window shortens to the first 90 minutes after sunrise, and then shuts down almost completely until late evening. That pattern holds regardless of your calling method. Tape, electronic mouth call. The time of day is about coyote behavior, not equipment. Now let me tell you the part of this story that I think matters as much as the technique itself. Predator call manufacturers in the United States collectively sell somewhere between $40 and $60 million worth of electronic collars and accessories every year. That number has grown every single year for the past decade because a new wave of hunters is entering predator calling each season. And the first thing a new hunter does is walk into a Bass Pro or a Cabela's and ask what equipment they need. The sales staff points them toward a wall of electronic collars starting at $80 and running past $400. Most first-time buyers walk out spending $120 to $200 minimum. That's before batteries. That's before the subscription app that some newer models require for expanded sound libraries. One manufacturer, I won't name them, but you've seen their products on every shelf, charges $29.99 per year for app access to their full call library. You buy the $180 collar and then pay $30 a year for the sounds. The business model is not selling you a tool. The business model is creating a dependency, making you believe that success in the field requires their specific product, upgraded regularly, maintained with their accessories, expanded with their software. The moment you understand that a roll of packing tape sitting in your garage performs at or above their $180 device, based on published frequency data and documented field results, that business model loses a customer. One customer out of millions. But the principle matters. The knowledge was always available. Wildlife biology research is public. The studies exist. The frequency data is not hidden. It just doesn't get promoted. Nobody has an incentive to promote it. Hunting channels that partner with gear companies don't run segments called, quote, one magazines, that run full-page ads for electronic collars, don't publish articles that make those collars look optional. And so the information stays quiet, passed down the same way useful knowledge always survives, person to person, from someone who actually went out and tested it to someone willing to listen. Dale Whitfield tested it for 2 years in controlled conditions across 3 Oklahoma study areas. He documented the results in a field notebook that sat in a filing cabinet in his garage for over a decade because he had no reason to publish it and nobody was asking. I sat at his kitchen table last spring and went through every page. 62 calling sequences. Success rates by tape type, by time of day, by wind condition, by season. All of it hand-logged in pencil by a man who spent his career watching predator behavior for the state of Oklahoma. That notebook is worth more than any hunting catalog ever printed. And the most important thing in it is this: the single most consistent predictor of coyote call response across all 62 sessions was not tape type, not time of day, not location. It was execution quality. Hunters who understood why the technique worked, who understood frequency matching and distress pattern irregularity, outperformed hunters who were just mechanically repeating steps. Understanding the biology behind what you're doing changes how you do it. It makes every small decision, how fast to rip, how long to pause, where to position, feel intuitive instead of arbitrary. That's what I want for every person watching this video. Not just a trick to try this weekend. A real understanding of what's happening between your call and that coyote's nervous system, so that you can adapt it, refine it, and make it work in conditions nobody has written a guide for yet. Here's something else Dale told me that stuck with me. He said the hunters who rely entirely on electronic equipment are actually training themselves out of a skill. When your caller does the work, you stop developing an ear for what sounds right, what timing feels correct, what the pause should feel like. Experienced mouth callers talk about this constantly. The instinct that builds after years of reading an animal's body language and adjusting your call in real time. Electronic callers remove that feedback loop. Tape keeps it alive. Because the sound you produce is slightly different every time. You're responding to the environment, the wind, the cold, your own positioning. You're making decisions, not pressing a button. That active engagement makes you a better hunter in ways that go beyond coyotes. It builds a kind of field intelligence that transfers to every predator, every situation, every piece of ground you've never hunted before. So here's where things stand. You have a roll of tape somewhere in your house right now, standard packing tape, the kind used to close cardboard boxes. That roll is a functioning predator call with documented field success rates above 50% in controlled testing. It costs nothing additional to use. It requires no batteries, no charging cable, no app, no warranty registration, no annual subscription. It produces sound in the 2,200 to 3,800 Hz range that falls directly inside the frequency window that wildlife biology has identified as the primary distress signal trigger for coyotes, foxes, and bobcats across North America. The technique requires 3 to 5 irregular rips in sequence, a controlled pause of 90 seconds, and repetition. You position downwind of your target area, with your silhouette broken and wait. That's it. That's the whole system. Dale Whitfield ran it 62 times in documented conditions and logged the results because he was a scientist who couldn't help himself. The results say it works as well as or better than what the industry sells. The industry has no incentive to tell you that. I do, because the only thing this channel has to offer you is accurate information. And accurate information about what actually works in the field is the only currency worth earning out here. One more thing before I close this out. The seasonal variation in this technique is worth understanding because it affects your expectations and your approach. Spring and early summer, late April through June, is actually one of the stronger windows for tape calling because you're hitting coyotes during pup rearing season. A nursing female or a male bringing food back to a den site is operating on heightened alert. Any distress sound in their territory gets investigated fast and aggressively. Dale logged his 3 shortest response times, under 90 seconds each, during May sessions. The flip side is that summer heat past mid-July slows everything down. Coyotes become nocturnal almost entirely during peak summer temperatures in the southern half of the country, and daytime calling success rates drop close to 0 in states like Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico from July through early September. In the northern states, Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, the temperature window stays workable later into summer. Know your region. The biology is consistent, but the seasonal timing shifts by latitude, and you need to adjust your expectations accordingly. Fall is the second best window overall. October through December brings juvenile coyotes dispersing from their birth territories, exploring new ground, establishing range. These young animals are less call-shy than adults that have heard electronic callers before. They haven't learned to associate certain sounds with danger. A dispersing juvenile coyote in October is close to the ideal target for any calling method, tape included. Dale specifically noted in his notebook that the highest percentage of coyotes that responded to tape during fall testing were animals under 18 months old based on size and coat condition. That tells you something important. The technique doesn't just work in theory, it works specifically well on the segment of the coyote population that's hardest to reach with traditional pressure-burned calling spots. Let me also address the skepticism that some of you are carrying right now, because I carried it too, and it's fair. The idea that ripping tape outperforms a purpose-built electronic caller sounds like the kind of claim that circulates on hunting forums and evaporates the moment someone actually tests it. I understand that reaction. The difference here is that I'm not asking you to take my word for it alone. I sat across from Dale Whitfield and went through 62 documented sessions in a field notebook written in the kind of careful handwriting that belongs to someone who spent decades filling out official wildlife forms. This isn't a buddy who told me he once called in a coyote with tape at a campfire story. This is 2 years of structured field documentation from a career wildlife technician. And the university-level frequency research supports the mechanism. The biology is not disputed. The only part that gets no mainstream airtime is the practical conclusion that the frequency match between ripping tape and prey distress sounds means you can replicate a functional call with something every household in America already owns. I tested it myself 23 times over the past 14 months across 4 different states: Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico. 12 confirmed visual responses, 7 harvested animals, 4 instances of hearing a response without a visual. That puts my personal success rate at around 52% for visual responses across all sessions, which tracks almost exactly with Dale's documented average of 51%. I'm not a professional wildlife technician. I'm a hunter who followed the instructions carefully, understood the biology, and applied the technique consistently. The results weren't magic, they were repeatable. And repeatability is the only thing that matters in the field. Next time you're walking to your truck after a session and you pull out a roll of tape to patch something in your gear bag, try it. Rip 1 strip, irregular pull, in the direction of the nearest tree line. See what happens. It might be the most interesting 2 minutes you've had in the field all season. Write in the comments what you've been using to call coyotes. I want to know if anyone else already figured this out before watching this video. And subscribe to the channel and hit the bell if you haven't already, because next week I'm covering a wind reading method that old-time trappers used before electronic weather stations existed. It takes 30 seconds to learn, and it changes how you set up on every piece of ground you walk. That's knowledge the gear companies definitely have no interest in spreading. See you then.